And yep, okay, cool. Kenny's giving me the thumbs up. So I think everyone knows Mike, but Mike Parisio with the Maine Forest Service, forest entomologist who coordinates the pheromone trap network. Just make sure this meeting. There you go, and just the arrows.
Okay, thank you, Regina.
Yep.
So, okay, so yeah, I'm just going to give everybody an update from the lens of the pheromone trap program, which is kind of the complement to the L2 program in Maine. So there we go. So yeah, just to start with some further context, and yeah, we'll hear from our friends in Canada right afterwards. But just to remind folks that spruce budworm is a huge, regional outbreaking pest. So here in Maine, we're not immune of what's going on in other places, despite our monitoring efforts. So it's really important to work together and have this regional picture of things going on. And we benefit from a lot of information from further north. In the form of these flight models, for example, that show us when there's big regional migrations of spruce budworm that do potentially wind up in Maine. So we've been kind of riding this wave since 2019. If you look at the left there, we had this huge influx of moths that migrated from Canada due to prevailing, wind patterns and climate conditions and stuff like that. So these actually arrived in Maine in good shape, came down in our forests, and we've been kind of focused on monitoring those populations ever since. And we have some of this stuff happens every year, or not every year, but you can see it happens periodically where we have these influxes. So we take a very coarse. Oh, my numbers changed. And my text all changed in my PowerPoint. So anyways, the curve is accurate, even though the numbers are not. So if you take a look at this annual statewide average, you can see, ever since 2014, we've been at a little bit of an elevated level. But again, 2019 was our year of huge inflight of moths from Canada. So that's artificially high for that year as we're capturing those actual moths from Canada. So we've dropped down in recent years. So in the past 3 years, those two numbers are supposed to be 16 and 16. And then looking at this year, we dropped to 13 statewide average. So everything's cool, right? Again, if we take a look at our regional picture statewide here, I just put this up here to kind of indicate, that there's a lot of monitoring going on over a huge area, and our neighboring northern New England states are monitoring as well. So they share their data with me. But, one of the great parts of this program is if you take a look at this map, you can obviously see, we have something going on in a pretty small area. So we can kind of focus our efforts on what's going there. And that, comes from both this data and the L2 data, obviously. So again, snapshot. So that's where the action is this year based on our pheromone trap data. If we zoom in, you can kind of see that distribution. So yes, some of these numbers are elevated compared to a pretty much quiet, rest of the state and things like that. So again, based on that polygon that Angela showed, these sites are to the north, east of her area of interest there. So again, there's a lot of local dispersal that might be happening that we can't really, document that well, but that might be the result of building populations in that area further south that are kind of migrating a little bit. So again, looking at that statewide average is not, totally a great representation. I think more than 2/3 of our pheromone trap sites are in Aroostook County. So the green line on top is the Aroostook County average. So that's where most things are happening. So you can see, obviously that's more elevated than other areas of the state. But as you saw from some of those historical maps, we've had spruce budworm affect many other areas of the state. And there's a lot of vulnerable spruce fir habitat all over the place. So that's why we still monitor them. Again, so yeah, I was able to obtain some of the defoliation data from Quebec that's gathered through their satellite imagery and aerial survey and stuff like that. So no brainer here. You can see some of these defoliation areas do press up against the Maine border. So we had a very unfortunate aerial survey season last year with the weather, so we did not get up into these areas that we typically fly with aerial survey for visual detection of any spruce budworm defoliation. We have not had visual defoliation through aerial survey in that area for several years, but this will be a high priority, assuming we have a better spring with less weather that prevents flights. So that will be high priority for when the aerial survey season starts and spruce budworm defoliation becomes visible on the landscape. And then, yeah, just there's a couple other areas of sampling we do that kind of corroborate this story and stuff like that. So we have these light traps that have been running for decades and decades all over the state. So again, they kind of, indicate what's going on in the state with the averages and stuff like that. So again, 2019, no brainer. We had that huge in-flight, but again, we have this increase in 2023 into the 60s where it was down in the teens, I believe, or whatever. So I just want to point out that all of those captures are at a single light trap station that's in St. Palmfield. So again, co-located with all of these other spruce budworm pieces of evidence we're noticing and stuff. I'll just flip through some maps of past seasons again, just to give some context of how we got to where we are now. So starting in 2018, and bear with me, we've changed some of the symbology and stuff to make these things a little bit more clear. But on each of these upcoming slides, you'll have, the preceding year and the following year. So 2018 to 2019, again, we had a lot of capture of moths that year due to regional movement. And then 2019 into 2020, we were relieved to see a little bit of a decrease in those, but obviously still elevated across a lot of northern Maine. This was also a relief as we looked at 2020 and 2021. You can see some of those really high bins have decreased, still some activity, but generally, less concerning. And then, yeah, here's where we changed the symbology just to make these things a little bit more visually representative of what we thought was going on. So on this map on the right, you can kind of see that a lot more of the state is quiet, so to speak. But even at this point in 2022, you can see in that portion of interest in far northwestern Aroostook County, we do have some slightly elevated traps. Again, nothing seriously concerning at that point, but again, maybe an indication of something going on there. So. And then, yeah, where we wind up today. So again, great to have the Budworm lab there so we can bounce ideas off of each other, as far as changing our sampling, regimens and stuff. So, maybe if this was known, sooner last year, we could have, taken a closer look going into this year. So looking forward to working with Angela and kind of teasing apart some of those relationships and, sharing all this data and tweaking stuff as we need. The other thing I'll just run through quick, we do some on the ground defoliation surveys. So here's a series of years from 2020 to 2023. So again, we didn't get quite as far into that area of interest as would have been fortunate, but this is what things look like. So you heard Angela, mention some of the stuff happening around Fort Kent. So you can see that large yellow circle there in New Canada, kind of central in that map. So that was one of those areas. And we did have some higher numbers of defoliation, at the very tip of northwestern Aroostook County there. And then 2021 was very similar numbers, so no major changes. So that was a relief. We didn't see any major increases and stuff like that. We did again have a few sites that had a little bit more than we would hope for, but the idea is just to keep a close eye on those. And then, yeah, 2022, everything really dropped off. All of these sites have less than 10% defoliation. And the way these defoliation scores are generated, it's not even guaranteed that it is budworm. It's needle loss to all, things. So it's high probability it's budworm, but it could be other things. But anyways, under 10% at all sites across, our 60 monitoring sites, and same thing for this past year. So yeah, again, we might try to relocate some of our on the ground defoliation sample sites this year to get into that area of interest, in addition to flying aerial survey over that. But yeah, we didn't really know about it till all this data has revealed it. So we'll take a closer look in this year. So that's what I have.
Quick
Question.
You kind of alluded to it, but does the Maine Forest Service have the ability themselves or to work with cooperators to put out more pheromone traps in that area that Angela indicated? And that the pheromone traps already with the Maine Forest Service have indicated that are higher.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of my goals, so a lot of these sampling sites for the pheromone trap survey have been in service for 30 years. And so 30 years in a spruce fir stand, things look a lot different. A lot of them, you know, we've been treating them as valuable for long-term data. But a lot of those site qualities have just decreased to the point where they're not really collecting good data. So we are going to be moving some of our Maine Forest Service sites during a period of what we thought might be kind of a lull to, you know, be ready for the next period of monitoring. So yeah, I've been talking with Joe, so it is a possibility we'll get some more sites in there. Yeah, if there are landowners that, you know, are in that area of interest that either want some supplemental traps, it might be a limited number, but we can certainly make that happen. And then also if those landowners want to discuss moving some of their other sites into those areas of interest for a better picture. But I think, you know, even more so than the pheromone trap monitoring, getting L2 sites into that area is highest priority because that data is a little bit more stronger for, you know, that management threshold. So. Sure.
You talk to the aerial reconnaissance that you do. Are you looking at stepping that up? What's the schedule of that? Are you going to coordinate it with the higher tiers that get identified?
Well, yeah, we certainly talk back and forth. Unfortunately, our coverage in northern Maine is usually I mean, in a good year, we have 3 flights up there and, you know, we'll try to, you know, split the difference and get as much coverage as possible. This past year, we were kind of focused a little bit on a forest tent caterpillar outbreak, you know, further east. So we spent our 1 flight that we actually had time to get up there on that. So again, knowing that this is there, you know, we'll definitely fly this core area. And then depending on what we see, you know, if it warrants a second flight, you know, that would be a good use of that. So we are kind of limited in our, you know, total number of days we can fly based on weather, based on staff, based on pilots and stuff like that. But now we have an area of concern, so that will receive more attention. We're kind of flexible in where we go because we can't cover the whole state like a grid like some other smaller states.
And will you identify landowners if you notice visual confirmation of it?
Yeah. I mean, we're aware of, you know, who the big landowners are in that area, and yeah, we can certainly have that conversation. And I believe we did do that. 2020, we had about 800 acres, and we did reach out to that particular landowner about that, you know, but they were already aware through some of these other monitoring services. So. Yep.
Curious, that hotspot in the northwest area, if the landowner or landowners have any plans to do the early intervention?
I would anticipate they would. I mean, some of the older hotspots from previous years that Angela pointed out, like those have been attacked or addressed using the EIS system. So yeah, as long as they have the means, I think we've demonstrated, and we'll hear more about that. But you know, that approach has worked for a couple of small outbreaks in Maine. You know, that was the first time for me to see that interpolation map today. So obviously we have a bigger fish to fry this year, but hopefully it's still within the realm of somebody being able to treat it. So thanks, everyone.
Just a reminder, I sent out Mike's report in the meeting materials, so if folks are interested in looking at that, it's available on the Maine Spruce Budworm Task Force site as well as the Maine Forest website.